But like the consultation document for the LTP, we have to put out a consultation document to get feedback from people. So all the stuff that happens before that is recorded and people have views about what should be in the financial strategy or whatever, but we still have to put out a document as a statutory process for people to be able to give feedback. So I just really want to make you aware of that, because if we don't do that, you know, it will put us in a very difficult situation in terms of timeframes, and actually could possibly call into question, you know, the council in terms of its governance. So think very carefully about how we vote today, because it is actually very important that we have to do this by law and we have to get something out.
Paul?
It's a very interesting concept, Yanni, and you're quite right, we do have an obligation, but it's like the long-term plan that we put out, and it didn't stop some councillors putting out an alternative to that plan. So I think it's important we vote the way we feel, and if we don't like something, we should have the right to actually vote against it, regardless.
The long-term plan had options. I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah, look, I actually don't think that was incredibly helpful. I think that what would be helpful for people to understand that there is a legal process happening here that is not of our making. The legal requirement is for us to do this. There is no provision in the there is no provision that would enable us to continue with our existing arrangements, largely because of the size of the Banks Peninsula ward compared to the other wards, and that cannot be allowed to continue. So I do regret if Jamie hadn't interjected and we'd just taken this as a single resolution, then this wouldn't have happened. But I'm going to put the motion and as a whole, and those that are unable to support their colleagues in putting out an initial proposal with an open mind to hear submissions from everyone on these matters, well then that's fine. But
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interject there, but I think that is unfair, because that is
it
not
actually isn't unfair.
There are items in that which we're not voting on.
I've already ruled on this matter. The ruling is that we actually had this debate. We completely had this debate, and we made it crystal clear to everyone last time that that was the debate, that all we would be doing would be voting for this or opposing this resolution. And I'm just inviting people that oppose the resolution initially to actually think about this as an initial proposal and to consider supporting it, because you've had all the arguments about why you don't agree with it. All of those will be put up by people if they agree with the position that you've adopted, and there is always room to change this when it comes to the final decision. This is not the final decision, it's just adopting an initial proposal. So I will put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Right, so we'll have a vote. That's carried. Thank you very much. And so now, thank you very much, and thanks for all the trouble that you've gone to. I know that this is a challenging process. The next item is the Housing Management Board Chairpersons report. Does this have to be dealt with today? Okay, it's an information only. Would someone like to move it? Jamie? Paul? Any discussion? Yep.
Page 253, the financial success of the CHIP is reliant on the level of the IRS, etc., etc. Originally, what was that amount, and now what is it estimated to be?
Originally, if it was estimated to be on all tenants, but that was changed in December last year. So from December last year, it hasn't really changed, except.
What was I'm just looking at the difference.
I think it was somewhere over north of 10. But obviously, as soon as existing tenants, which nobody else has access to IRRS on either, came out of that when Paula Bennett wrote that letter, then it dropped. The predictions from Deloitte's are now incredibly conservative in the first year. I don't have them in front of me, but they only start. No, they're about 500,000 or something in the first year because they only start after 6 months. Because obviously, the longer we take to get there, and then they only have them increasing in their financials by, I think, 5% per annum, which is incredibly conservative.
Yeah,
Nonetheless, it makes the CHIP financially sustainable,
yeah, very conservative.
even with
Turnover
incredibly
13%,
conservative numbers.
And,
I've got another question, if I can, on page 254. 2.6G, the financials provided by Deloitte is potentially financially viable. Potentially, what's that based on?
Well, because their financials are incredibly conservative. So they've got something like our own staff estimate is that we turn over the entire tenancies in about every 10 to 12 years. They've worked it on about a 20-year time frame. So all of their numbers are incredibly conservative.
All right, thank you.
But it does actually wash its face, no problem. It also has some quite major savings in there. So there is some quite immediate and quite major savings.
All right, so I'll put that.
The 2.3, the bullet point in the middle, enable flexibility for partner to exit from the community housing provider. Whether this community housing provider, new one, is full, have any legal responsibility?
So obviously, everything that you do, the view of the Housing Management Board was that it was best to look at all the risks while there weren't any. So it's looked at what happens if the CHIP doesn't need to be there, if the IRRS is no longer there, there's a change of government, all sorts of things could happen, and those are real things in politics. A number of things, a partner may exit. What would happen to the council's resources? Two resources. One, the housing that we lease, clearly that stays in the council's ownership. The second is any land or other assets that we put in there, and that's why the suggestion is that the vast majority of that is by way of loan rather than direct gift, so that if the CHIP winds up, and it's important to take all these things into account, if the CHIP winds up, then the council gets first call on those assets, so that the council's assets are protected all along the way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Events, festivals.